All right, ready to go? Good evening, good evening. Good evening, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Let's welcome to the King. Please stand up and give him another salute. Stand up. Welcome to Washington. Your Excellency, welcome to Washington. Welcome to the Africa Union Mission. We're so happy that you're here. We're going to start our program by hearing from Her Excellency Ambassador Ericana Chimbori Kwao, who is the Africa Union's representative to the United States and many other places. But she's also the queen of this house. This is her house. And she's the one who brought us she's the one who brought us together, and she has made the diaspora the priority. So we all are very appreciative of Ambassador. Please, why don't you welcome us to your opening remarks.
Your Majesty, the King of the famous Ashanti Kingdom, to the organizers of this wonderful event, the Steering Committee of the African Union African Diaspora Health Initiative, to my second husband, His Excellency, the Ambassador to Ghana, and of course his wife is my husband as well. We marry both women and men. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor to be blessed with His Majesty's presence right here in our lovely home, the African Union Mission in the heart of Washington, D.C., in Georgetown. It is also fitting that we are blessed in this home by His Majesty from the famous Ashanti Kingdom in Ghana, the home of none other than our Pan-African father, Kwame Nkrumah. It simply does not get any better. As I was welcoming His Excellency through the back door, I found myself dreaming of when it was that Emperor Haile Selassie called on all of them to come to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to discuss how we, the children of Africa, can become whole again by coming together and getting rid of the scourge of colonization. We are in the midst of one who truly believes that Africa can only take her rightful place on the world stage when the children of Africa come together. We were upstairs.
All right, children.
As we were visiting with each other upstairs, he reminded me, he said, we Africans have forgotten something. We had our own ways of governance. We have our own ways of social services. We have put aside that which was consequentially African and chosen to adopt the strange man's ways. And it's precisely because we have adopted another man's ways that we are finding ourselves lost in the wilderness. But that, however, all is not lost. He looked me dead in the face and said, we will go back to who we were. So I am just so excited and can't wait to listen to what he has to share with us, taking us back to where we were and how we're going to learn about the most powerful kingdom on the continent, the Ashanti. And how when we go back to being the Ashanti again, that it is the only way when Africa can become whole again, when Africa can regain her glory, when Africa can be the leader of the world like we used to be. As we sit here, we are sitting with one whose DNA that runs in his veins is the DNA of originality. The DNA that says, before anybody else, we were. Without the black person on earth, there would not be any humanity. So we are truly blessed to have humanity as it should be in the house. Ladies and gentlemen, please join your hands and help me welcome our King, His Majesty. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. We now want to hear from the Ghana Ambassador to the United States, Dr. Bafora Ajay Abawa, who is he's been very busy this last couple of months, all over the place. But we welcome you to Washington. I know you were in Ghana with a lot of African American diaspora and Congressional Black Caucus. So please come and provide remarks.
Otumfuo, Madam Ambassador, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm in the position of a priest who was supposed to preach the sermon, but the bishop was in the audience. So he just said that normally, because we pray to the Almighty upstairs, and because the cap he is wearing is shorter than the mitre of the bishop, he thinks it's the bishop who should be speaking. So I don't suppose there is too much that I'm going to say, except for the fact that I'm very excited that Otumfuo is here at a time when I'm also the ambassador in Washington. The little that I would say, which I don't expect him to talk about because he cannot be seen to be that partisan, is that I just want to remind you that he happens to be the king whose capital city the ancient Arabs described or said about Ki napazete okumasi nete pazo paradi. If you have not been to Kumasi, you haven't been to paradise. So just want you to know that the owner of paradise is here. And I do believe that he would have more to say about what we are all passionate about. And then may I remind those of you who probably have not been to Ghana before that this is the time to go. If for nothing at all, you would want to go and see where the owner of paradise lives. And besides, if you know a little bit of geography, Ghana sits in the center of West Africa, and also the prime meridian runs through Ghana, and Ghana sits 3 degrees north of the equator. So technically, Ghana sits at the center of the earth. And therefore, you can comfortably assume or believe that when the good Lord was doing the business, he was standing on Ghanaian soil. So, if Otumfuo happens to be talking about doing business in Ghana, if he happens to be talking about Ghana being the place to go, he has a lot of references to use. And I do believe that after he's said his bit, it will be impossible for any of you not to buy a ticket within the next week and go to Ghana. I just want you to enjoy having his company because not too many people are ever going to have this experience. I can tell you that when I was a little boy, the joy that most people in Kumasi had was to go to the palace on Sunday morning to watch Ashanti's Rolls Royce being cleaned up. You have the person himself here. Grab him in terms of whatever he says, or if you happen to rub shoulders with him, that is fine. But if you do, I happen to be his agent, and I will collect fees from you before. You are welcome to the King's presence.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I now want to call on Marlon Washington Brown, who's the head of the Ashanti Investment Trust Fund and the chairman of the Africa Union's Diaspora Health Initiative, for his remarks. Yeah, thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. Your Majesty, welcome again. Your Excellence, welcome. It's an honor to have you all here, and I'm humbled to be in your presence. Some time ago, Ambassador Chimbori Kwao, her brainchild was the African Union African Diaspora Health Initiative. That was a nonprofit entity that would work very closely with the African Union mission to execute and help to mobilize the diaspora for the things related to Africa. I was honored when Ambassador asked me recently to be the chair of this great committee and this great program, this great institution. We have a number of our steering committee members who worked so hard to help organize this and to welcome the King. If you're here, can you please kind of stand or wave your hand so that others could see? We had a number of people working on that. The role of AU-ADHI is to help mobilize, motivate, provide vision and direction and structure for the African diaspora here in the Americas, Canada, the US, the Caribbean, and South America, to work together to help transform and build Africa together. So that is the mission of our institution and our entity. And we have several programs that we're trying to implement in order to do that. If anybody knows Ambassador Kwao, you know she has traveled throughout the continent, and she's motivated, she's started chapters, she's a great speaker, and people are kind of drawn to her. And so this institution, since she became ambassador, is really taking off as a diaspora entity. And we just think that this is the time of the diaspora to now engage with the continent to change the trajectory and help to change the trajectory of Africa. I'd like to ask one of my colleagues who is here this evening with me, who was one of the founders or one of the first steering committee members for AU-ADHI, to come and talk a little bit about some of the programs that we're implementing under the organization. Eric Guichard.
Thank you, Marlon. Very kind of you. His Royal Highness, Excellencies, Ambassador Chimbori Kwao, Ambassador Dr. I know that both of you are doctors, so I'm not sure what the plural of doctors is, but welcome to this extraordinary ceremony. I was asked by Marlon to talk about the substance of the work that our extraordinary steering committee is doing, and I really must give a huge shout out for the work that they have done to pull this event together. You don't know how many WhatsApp groups and text messages have been sent. I'm pretty sure that if the Guinness World Record were to check, we may have broken the record here. But again, Marlon, congratulations for pulling this together. Wonderful work. As Marlon mentioned, this group was put together by an extraordinary visionary. And I, being of Guinean descent, since the passing of Sékou Touré, have been looking for, someone with a great vision. And I was extraordinarily moved by Ambassador Chibori Kwa with her clearness of thought, and most importantly, and this is a quality that distinguishes a leader from a pretender, and that's fearlessness. She has fearlessness. And as members of the African diaspora in the Americas, we are overwhelmed with joy to have a leader that is blazing a path towards a unique vision for Africa. Without further ado, I'm going to quickly go through some of the extraordinary programs that we're working on. The first one that she attracted me to was the creation of smart cities in Africa. These are hubs of excellence, both in healthcare and in other key domains, where the African diaspora will be called to practice and to deliver their expertise to the growing members of our community back home. The first one of which we're working on is what Marlon talked about, which is the health initiative, where we are creating some extraordinary programs around the training as well as the staffing of teaching hospitals and smart cities around those teaching hospitals. In addition, we are putting together a series of conferences in order to bring together, mobilize the diaspora around these ideas, identify who the experts are, and then more importantly, identify the opportunities that are emanating from many of the convening sources, such as the trade initiative that recently passed by member states, in order to create opportunities for the diaspora to participate not only with their dollars but also with their minds. I think that's extremely important. And since we're not only working bees, we've also put together a program around entertainment. So there's several galas that are being planned, as well as, most importantly, a pageant. And so please stay tuned to the leadership of the ambassador and of Marlon for a really transformative set of activities that are going to be put together in order to mobilize our diaspora force for the transformation of the continent. Again, thank you very much.
Back again. I was asked to say something about the Ashanti Investment Trust. One of the great things about His Majesty is that he is a visionary and he's a very, very wise man. I've gotten to know him a little bit. I was fortunate to get to know him over the last few years or so, and then in some of the things that we were able to talk about, it's very, very clear that in addition to being the king of Ashanti, he's very thoughtful about what the legacy is going to be. He cares about the people of Ashanti, he cares about the people of Ghana, and he cares about Africa. And so he clearly, if you have a chance to talk with Otumfuo Asante, you will find that he's thinking about what can I do to use my position to elevate my people. And so one of the things that we began talking about was with a team of people within the kingdom is the Ashanti Investment Trust. And this is a vehicle which begins to now harness the resources, the vast resources of the kingdom, to put them in a vehicle so that they could be much more commercially structured. They can be organized in a way that institutional investors and participants, both from a social and a socioeconomic and an impact standpoint, can participate. And when we looked at this, we structured this in what's called like a sovereign fund structure. And it was done at His Majesty's direction, that he wanted to create economic transformation throughout Ashanti, throughout Ghana, And at the end of the day, he wanted to create something that was sustainable and that was in posterity, that would support the people of Ghana and the people of Ashanti. So under the AIT, as it's called, the assets are enormous, and behind it now is a structure that will allow for investments there. So if you think about even some of the assets that are there, bauxite, gold, minerals, agriculture, land, there are plans for a brand new airport that is going to be the pride of Africa. Around that airport will be an airtropolis, a new smart city in West Africa. There are plans for an eco park, the likes of what not been seen since Disney World here in the U.S. And all this from the wisdom of His Majesty. So there's a lot going on. His Majesty has a vision to transform this, and I believe, as you will maybe hear him say, he's very keen that the diaspora is involved in helping to bring this to the fore, not only in terms of investments, but investment of your knowledge, investment of ideas, investment of talent, because we're one, we really are. And it's time for Africa to take its rightful place in the world, and that's going to happen when continental Africans and diasporans come together to make that happen. And it is happening today, and I'm very, very excited about that, and wanted to just mention that to you all today. Thank you.
Ashe. Okay, we're at the really the appointed hour. I'm going to call on to introduce His Majesty Nana Atwa Siribu, who is the Paramount Chief of Juaben. Huh? Am I close? And he's the Chairman of the Council of State of the Republic of Ghana. Please, Your Excellency. I think I did okay. Okay.
You've done very well by way of pronouncing my name. Your Majesty Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, Asante, Excellencies, Nananum, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Africans and friends of Africa. This is my singular honor and pleasure to be invited to introduce my boss and king, my overlord, Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, the 16th Asante. The Asante is the local parlance of the king who sits on the stool of gold, which is the repository of the soul and spirit of the Ashanti nation and Ashanti kingdom. The Ashanti kingdom at its peak had a land area which is bigger than the land size of present-day Ghana, with subjects in far away as Côte d'Ivoire, Togo, Burkina Faso, and beyond. However, the effects of colonialism and colonization did reduce the size of the Ashanti kingdom, and the Ashantis have never lost hope of the fact that they belong to a king, and that in the king there is hope for the future, and there's continuity with the past. Otumfuo Osei Tutu ascended the golden stool of Asante in 1999, at a time when a lot of people felt that chieftaincy was a moribund institution, it was decadent in nature and not fit to play any part in the modern governance structure of Africa and the African states. However, over the past 20 years, by dint of hard work, vision, and commitment and foresight, he has transformed the institution into one of a viral, active, and progressive institutions of Ghana and, for that matter, of Africa. He did realize at the outset of his reign that he had to invest in the human capital of his people. And he is not the king who is very selective and who would only look at Ashantis, for that matter, and deny others their due share of his benevolence and munificence. He has been able to offer scholarships to over 35,000 people to pursue education from the primary to the tertiary level, both in Ghana and abroad. And the Otumfuo Osei Tutu Education, or Otumfuo Osei Tutu Foundation, has components that deal with health, that deal with culture, that deal with social transformation, and that deal with a whole lot of other facets of life. And these have been very vigorously pursuing the vision of Otumfuo, to the extent that non-Ashantis have been beneficiaries of the Otumfuo Osei Tutu Foundation. Over 300,000 other students have benefited by way of support in terms of book allowances, clothing, and other such supports to pursue education at both the secondary and the tertiary levels. Otumfuo's monumental support for education has been felt along throughout the length and breadth of Ghana and the Commonwealth, to the extent that the Association of Commonwealth Universities, within the first 2 years of Otumfuo's reign, decided that he was worthy of being honored with the highest honor of the Commonwealth as far as education was concerned, by investing him with the Philip Simons Award for pursuing the programs of education. That was as recent as the year 2001. That has not been the end of his endeavors as far as social transformation is concerned. He has been very much concerned with cultural preservation and modernization, because he realized that most of our history, because they were not written, were always invariably adulterated to the person who would be the best advocates in terms of litigation. So upon his instrument, he ensured that all cases that came before him were documented. There were video clips, and they were translated and kept in archives, so that subsequently, when somebody came to tell a story which was far from what has been said, there was the non-controvertible evidence to ensure that the proper thing had been said and done. This has really helped us to put our history and our customs and our culture in good perspective. And very soon, Otumfuo has engaged people to ensure that they decode all this in terms of revised Ashanti, Morris, and customs, so that future generations would not grope in the dark, as they say. We have had the benefit of his wisdom permeating the political realm of Ghana. Over the past 25 years, Ghana has had about 5 elections, and the aftermath of each election has been very smooth. When you are outside of the center of gravity of this political activity, you will think that it's as good as clockwork or as good as today being Monday and tomorrow being a Tuesday. No, it hasn't worked that way. It has taken the wisdom and diplomacy of Otumfuo to ensure that the feuding parties after elections are brought together and the peace is brokered. And such peace, when they are brokered, have accorded with the acceptance of everybody that has been involved. But for his Otumfuo's intervention, Ghana would not have been as peaceful as we are enjoying right now. No wonder his other name is King Solomon. So we say Otumfuo Osei Tutu, the second king of Ashanti, a.k.a. King Solomon. Otumfuo in 2012, for example, openly brokered a peace with all the contesting candidates for the 2012 presidential election, where he brought them to Kumasi and got them to sign an accord which bound them to respect the outcome of the elections. And this worked. And this worked like magic. It did work like magic. If you had had him in other parts of Africa, or somebody of his ilk in Ivory Coast, maybe Gbagbo and Ouattara would not have been at each other's throats. But we have Otumfuo in Ghana, and he is the calm that settles everything and brings everything to a happy and amicable and successful end. Otumfuo, Ghana is grateful to you. Otumfuo's multifarious achievements have been acknowledged the length and breadth of Africa and in parts of the world. Otumfuo has been the recipient of several honorary degrees, starting from as close to this hall as the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, where I was privileged to be present when he was invested with an honorary degree, DSc honoris causa, for his role in education and for promoting peace. He was also the recipient of an honorary degree from the University of Glasgow when they were celebrating their 600th year. And on the roll call of honors was no other person than Prince Charles of the United Kingdom, who was also honored on that same day. I must also mention that Madame Gracia Machel was equally honored on that day. I mean, how wonderful it is for an African king to be accorded such an honor in a metropolitan university like Glasgow, which was the bastion of colonialism and imperialism. But here you are, we have broken all bounds, and now they accept and recognize that an African is also worthy of being accorded this high honor. And on the same base and between the same parallels, as the mathematician would say, was their own Prince Charles. Otumfuo has been the recipient of almost all the universities in Ghana have been vying to honor him one way or the other with an honorary degree. And if I should mention those that are in the queue, it will take me about 2 days. But we ask them to buy their time because he has to have time for those in the diaspora. And he must have time for Melon and his Ashanti trusts before, before he has time for those acolytes. And you may also know that Otumfuo is the Chancellor of Ghana's premier science and technology university, of which I'm a proud alumnus. And it is due to his tact and vision and diplomacy that a major conflagration, which was about starting somewhere last year, was quelled. And KNUST has since known all the peace. I'm referring here to the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Kumasi. Otumfuo is Ashanti, and Ashanti is Otumfuo. He carries us, and we respect him, we adore him, and we give him all the support to enable him perform. Otumfuo is here today addressing you. On Friday, he'll be mounting the podium at the UN, where he'll be the keynote speaker on the occasion of the 20th anniversary of the declaration and adoption of a program of action on the culture of peace at the high-level forum of the United Nations. I'm reliably informed, and I have no cause to doubt the authenticity of my information, that he's the first African traditional ruler who has been given this honor. I'm sure CNN may find it worthy to beam it live and give us less concentration on the after effects of Hurricane Dorian. So, Otumfuo is here to share fellowship with you. And I'm sure that the words of wisdom and sagacity that will issue out of his mouth will fill your heart, your mind, and your soul from this day forward until it shall be his honor and pleasure that we meet one more time. Thank you very much for the honor.
Please rise.
Please sit down. Please sit down. Madam, sit down.
Osaji fogu nyegwasio grasa tinadwe kasangen. Osaji fogu nyegwasio grasa tinadwe kasangen. Otokoni kase krobiaine kasangen. Otokoni kase krobiaine kasangen. Mema krobiaine fiamani kotokungen. Mema krobiaine fiamani kotokungen. Asante chantrotmo champonu fungen. Asante chantrotmo champonu fungen. Sebo sumenditien. Asante sebo sumenditien. Robia satinadwe kasangen. Robia satinadwe kasangen. Osetutu emi modi nyevisio. Osetutu emi modi nyevisio. Wine de benya sekanti nchire bwachi dankwan se wampim sika pobano. Wine de benya sekanti nchire bwachi dankwan se wampim sika pobano. Obinya se bianko baby. Obinya se bianko baby. Lago bakana ne flampo no damle ferisi. Lago bakana ne flampo. Them le faire ici. Mais moi je viens de koyadungen. Mais moi je viens de koyadungen. Ya donne dia ku boji juta tot mo champo nu fungen. Ya donne dia ku boji juta tot mo champo nu fungen. Mo Otosika sama na jijakungen. Otosika sama na jijakungen. Jakwembo bankrodun fro. Jakwembo bankrodun fro. Na flewe frampo damle fao. Na flewe frampo damle fao. Osaji fogu nyagwa singen. Osaji fogu nyagwa singen. Obrasa tinadwe kasangen. Obrasa tinadwe kasangen.
Your Excellency, the Ambassador of the African Union to the Americas, Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Ghana to the United States of America, the Chairman of the Diasporan Mission here, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellency, I thank you very much for the invitation to address this distinguished audience. I am particularly gratified that I'm required to share my perspectives on the economic development, not only of my country, but the wider African continent, and the role the African diaspora may play in the process. These subjects are usually articulated by political leaders and professional economists rather than traditional leaders. Indeed, the custodians of the heritage of Africa are generally seen as relics of a long-gone past who are best kept on the fringes of serious debate and decision-making, often mistaken to be at odds with modernity. I am sure, therefore, that traditional leaders throughout Africa will find it encouraged that a forum such as this is seeking the perspectives of a custodian of our heritage on the very critical issue of how the diaspora may participate in the development of our countries and our continent. The decision of the leaders of Africa to accord the African diaspora an equal space at the high table was one of the most thoughtful decisions of the African Union. It was the affirmation of the inescapable reality of our history, a history conceived in pain and blood, but brewed in hope and in courage. Africa is not just a figure of space, but the very construct of the human soul. The diaspora is the bleeding soul of Africa, a fulsome part of the African heritage, and the unbreakable link of the pain of yesterday with the hope of today. In every sense, you are part of the DNA of Africa. For me, the genuine African extended family who have planted the soul of Africa onto these lands you now call home. We both share the glories of past kingdoms and empires, as well as the grim and unfathomable suffering now etched upon our souls. A little over a century ago, one of the greatest thinkers of his time, the legendary African-American Dr. William Edward Du Bois, in one of his timeless reflections on the condition of his people, wrote of the convulsive tension embodied in the consciousness of black folk, which he characterized so movingly as a state of double consciousness. This sense of looking at oneself through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on in an amused contempt and pity. One ever feels his two-ness, an American and a black. Two thoughts, two irreconcilable stirrings, two warring ideas in one dark body whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. This double consciousness, indefinable two-ness, is as real today as it was before Du Bois wrote his monumental Souls of Black Folk. As you know, Dr. Du Bois himself became so disillusioned with the United States and so enthused by the prospect of a new dawn in Africa that he left the United States and took up the citizenship of Ghana at the height of the country's emergence as the shining star of African liberation. Dr. Du Bois died a citizen of Ghana, where we celebrate him with a magnificent Du Bois Center in the nation's capital. But as you also know, Dr. Du Bois did not share the vision of Marcus Garvey of a wholesale back to Africa movement. His preference was the liberation of the soul of black folk everywhere to deliver unto him the inalienable rights bequeathed to all men by their Creator, and to guarantee the freedom and equality of black people everywhere in Africa, the United States, or the West Indies. Now, I am confident that every African country today will gladly welcome the return of every son or daughter in the diaspora. Certainly, as a custodian of the vast landmass of Ashanti Kingdom, I have an open space and will welcome anyone home. But we know that that is not today's reality or today's option. The great option today is the opportunity to convert the befuddling double consciousness and awful two-ness into a double positive for Africa and its diaspora. This is the opportunity, the challenge to work together to build a powerful, wealthy homeland in Africa and an economically strong, free, and confident diaspora. Madam Ambassador, sons and daughters of Africa, I hope you see the perspective from which I come in contemplating the challenge of Africa's economic development and the role the diaspora can play in it. I do not see it as my task to inflict upon you data on the state of the economies of Africa, its promises and its challenges. I will leave that to the economists. In any event, in the internet world of today, you only need to click, just one click on the tablet, to upload tons of big data on all the information you require. But as an African king, it is my duty to reach out and touch your soul, to raise the consciousness to the reality that all of us are sons and daughters of one Africa, and the success of one Africa is a duty from which we dare not shirk. The AU decision in recognizing the diaspora not just confirmed you as the extended family whose interests could not be ignored, but opened a unique opportunity for inclusive engagement and collaboration in the pursuit of the continent's social and economic development. The concern, however, is that neither the African Union as an institution nor the leaders of Africa, as well as the diaspora, have managed to fashion out an appropriate formula for this mutually desirable engagement. As a result, there has been little evidence of a conscious effort to encourage any serious initiatives from the diaspora in the development programs of the continent. It cannot be true that this is the result of any disinterest on either side on the need for mutual engagement. What is clear to me, however, is that this state of affairs is not right for either side, and in our common interest, a decisive change must come soonest. Although I decline, as already stated, to duplicate the role of our economic analysts, I think it is only right and fair for us to admit that Africa's record of economic development since the decades of independence has not been entirely satisfactory. We pride ourselves in the fact that we are probably the most resource-rich continent on the planet, but we have failed to make the value of these resources count in the economic fortunes of our countries. We have to admit that after 6 decades of independence, the level of poverty in Africa today is unacceptable, and our inability to provide adequately for the health care of our people extremely painful. I know that a large part of this is due to the global economic system, which has been manifestly unfair to us and which many see as shackling the poor. Most certainly, I'll be on the side of those who question the fairness of the models under which the resources of the continent have been exploited to this day. Nonetheless, I also have to admit that as a continent, we could do much better. But, Madam Ambassador, there's another narrative, a cheering and inspiring narrative Africa can now offer. The economies of Africa are being turned around remarkably well. In recent years, some of the best performing economies in the world have been from Africa. Most countries have learned their lessons from the mistakes of the immediate post-colonial years and are transforming their economies to the admiration of the best of global analysts. If we should take the example of my own country, Ghana, Ghana has demonstrated a remarkable maturation both in the process of governance and the quality of economic management such as few countries of any size could emulate. In 2001, President John Otumfuo submitted Ghana to the inglorious club of a heavily indebted poor country. In less than a decade, Ghana not only threw off the stigma of HIPIC, but emerged as a lower middle income country, achieving the niche of the fastest growing economy at the time. 2 years ago, President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo took the bold decision to extend free education up to secondary or high school level to all Ghanaians in a determined drive to wipe out illiteracy and provide equal opportunities to all. At the same time, the President is bringing back to life the railway network abandoned for over a decade to kickstart the modernization of the country's infrastructure. The economy of Ghana is anchored on the values of the free market, backed by a commitment to the rule of law, and offers a congenial and environment as can be expected for foreign investment in a wide range of projects. A massive multi-layered agricultural program offers investment opportunities for food production, livestock, fisheries, and raw materials for industrial production and export. The scope of industrialization is equally massive. A large reservoir of highly educated manpower provides an abundant source of labor for the challenge of industrialization and for housing and construction. But all the measures of economic management, Ghana stands tall among the best environments for private and foreign investments. And I need to add, Ghana is not alone in Africa. Countries like Rwanda, Botswana, and Cote d'Ivoire are on a pedestal of an increasing number of countries who are rewriting the story of Africa's economic performance. We can be sure that Africa has the prospect of becoming a tower of strength economically. So it is only right that we bring our brothers and sisters of our extended family fully on board and to explore with them how they can participate meaningfully in this phase of the continent's development. Obviously, this is something the African Union should work actively on. For my part, we should see the creation of special investment vehicles targeted at the African homeland. And here is what I see as a challenge to creativity within the diaspora. In my view, it is time to upscale the diaspora in response to the continent by moving from the emotional to the concrete development partnership. For this to happen, we need the creation of highly leveraged investment and financial vehicles by which the diaspora can partner African countries and African entrepreneurs in their development programs. The vehicles should be designed to facilitate and promote investment in Africa and the promotion of trade and services between the African homeland and the United States. I'm sure we are all aware of the AGOA program designed to stimulate trade between us. No doubt, it has made some impact. But it is obvious that neither Africa nor the United States has derived the optimum benefit from the available opportunities. Here is the challenge of promoting fruitful linkages with small-scale entrepreneurship, especially the courageous band of women entrepreneurs whose tireless pursuits have sustained the economies of Africa to this day. In addition to exploring direct investment opportunities in Africa, the diaspora needs to step up the plate in advancing the economic interests of Africa through its effective advocacy for just and equitable terms of trade and services. It may seem like an extraordinarily big task to expect the diaspora to add the advocacy of Africa's economic well-being to its task at a time such sensitivity and uncertainty. The climate of opinion and the direction of travel of the economy of the global superpower may not be particularly propitious for any advocacy for the enhancement of free trade. Further, we need to awaken the sensitivities and consciousness of African leaders of today to the appreciation that our extended family has yet to achieve the goals of the civil rights movement. Africa gained political freedom but has failed to add the economic value which will give our people fulfilled lives. In the diaspora, too, the gains of the civil rights movement have not delivered the promised equality, social and economic advancement to heal distressed souls. So we remain thrust onto that theater of life where the supreme interests of both are intertwined. A few weeks ago, the Congressional Majority Leader Nancy Pelosi led a congressional mission to Ghana, thanks to our ambassador, to pay tribute to the country for the inspiration it gave to the civil rights movements in the United States. That is a fact of our history, which holds us in an unbreakable brotherhood. I recall that Dr. Martin Luther King was a member of the United States delegation to the independence celebration in Accra in 1957 and struck strong bonds with Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Dr. King left no doubt about the inspiration he drew from the Ghanaian leader in shaping the movement for the rights of our extended family in their new abode. A succession of civil rights leaders, writers, artists, and sportsmen, from Dr. Du Bois to Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, and James Baldwin, Louis Satchmo Armstrong, and Nina Simone, and the incomparable Muhammad Ali, all followed in the wake of Dr. King, making our small country something of a mecca from which they drew inspiration to pursue the struggle for their God-given rights. But while taking pride in the inspiration which our independence gave to the civil rights movement, we also should acknowledge the negative impact which the failure of Africa in managing its economy has had on the diaspora. Just as the political gains of the past uplifted spirits, enhanced the outlook and opened doors for our brothers and sisters, we see the converse of morals sagging, spirits lowering, and doors shutting on them as a consequence of the economic failings of the recent past. We should admit that the unending stream of harrowing images of children drinking from contaminated streams, victims of famine and disease, heart-rending images of our flesh and blood risking death on the high seas in desperate attempts ostensibly to escape poverty in Africa have done no good to our extended family in the diaspora. Every negative narrative that comes out of Africa, every tale of poverty, unmanageable disease, of corruption and incompetence, strikes at the very soul of our brothers in the diaspora. So if there's any theme around which any discourse between Africa and the diaspora should flow, it is this: we are in this together. Kwame Nkrumah told the world that the independence of Ghana was meaningless unless it was linked with the total liberation of the African continent. Today we bear our independence with some pride because the continent has attained the political liberation we sought. But the battle has not ended yet. We now face the challenge of economic development such as will lift our people from the scourge of poverty, ignorance, and disease and give them a decent quality of life. I will argue today that the triumph of economic development in Africa is a condition for the salvation of the soul of black folk in the diaspora. We have no choice but to work together to redeem the economy of Africa and the soul and dignity of black folk everywhere. I thank you very much for listening to me.
Please be seated. Nana, we would like to thank you so much for visiting with us and for sharing with us. I know that after having the privilege of meeting you, it was my heart's desire that the diaspora would have a chance to hear a leader of your stature express how important it is for the diaspora to be engaged in the transformation of Africa, of Ghana, and of Ashanti. And I want to thank you for being here with us today, for taking time out of your schedule. You know, every time I see Otumfuo, he asks me, how is my tweet? And I learn little by little, so cra, 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 cra. Yeah. And so today I would say to those who understand a little bit, Majesty, which is thank you for being here, and Yenko, let's go, let's get it done. I would like to ask, we have a couple of announcements. I'd like to ask if a member of our steering committee, Joyce Williams, would come to the podium and give thanks to our dignitaries and a couple of announcements before we leave. And I will say Joyce is a daughter of Ghana. And before we leave, I'd like to ask that you give a chance for the dignitaries to exit the room before exiting. Yeah.
Thank you, Marlon. And thank you all for being here with us this evening. This morning, I was reflecting on the day, the events that we are going to have. And I looked up the date, and it's September 9, 2019. So there's 9, 9, and 9. And I asked my Alexa if there's anything special about the number 9. And Alexa said in biblical terms, it means completeness. And indeed, today is a day of completeness because last year, the president of Ghana in Washington declared the year of return to Ghana. And since then, we have seen several events and action on the part of the diaspora. And we couldn't have closed it out any better than to have His Majesty with us at the African House in the presence of all of you this evening. So thank you for being with us. The African Union Diaspora Health Initiative, at the beginning of the program, as it was announced, we have some initiatives that are rolling out. So for those of you who have been here before, we hope that you continue to journey with us. For those of you who are here for the first time, we hope that it is a lasting relationship that we are beginning today. The first time I came to the AU house, the ambassador said, "Welcome to your house. This is my home," and it's truly been my home, and I hope that you felt that way this evening. We want to thank His Majesty Otumfuo Osei Tutu II. I remember very well when he was crowned in 1999. I was in Kumasi. And it's really an honor and privilege to be in the same space with him. We thank him for taking time out of his busy schedule to be with us and to share his thoughts and invite us to join him in paradise. We want to thank all his traveling staff that came with him. We know that the journey from Ghana to the US, whether you're in first class or economy, it can be easier. So thank you all, Nananom. I want to thank Ambassador Arikana for her warm hospitality. And I really, really hope that you have felt that hospitality as you have been here. And I want to thank Ambassador Belwa, the Ghana ambassador to the United States. He is like a father figure to most of us. Thank you for making this possible. And for Marlon and all the steering committee members who have spent countless hours discussing this, putting this together, thank you so much for your time. And as Ambassador Belwa was speaking, he said Kumasi is paradise. We have the privilege of celebrating with His Majesty in Kumasi on December 29th in Ghana, an awards ceremony. It is the last Kwesi Day, and this year happens to be His Majesty's 20th anniversary on the throne. So this is an open invitation for all of you to join us in Kumasi on December 29th at the beautiful Menchia Palace to come. Let us celebrate what His Majesty has done, what he is doing, what his vision for the future is. Let us join him, rally behind him, and move that forward. So if you are interested, kindly see me after or see any of the AU staff. Leave your information. We'll follow up with details. And we hope to see all of you in Ghana in December. Thank you very much.
Okay, so everybody should remain seated and allow His Majesty and his delegation a proper way to leave, okay? So please stay seated or stay in your place and allow the king to leave. Stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up. Please don't let him leave while you sit there. I just said it. Stay in your place.